Hey guys, this is Vander Bosch here with the 1991 Delica L300. We're going to be doing the fuel filter on this, and we'll kind of just walk you guys through it. It's my first time doing it, so we'll see what kind of problems we run into. So if you lift up the seat, the L300's fuel filter is right down here. There are two bolts up top that connect to the firewall. Here's the hand pump. There should be an air bleeder screw, which is kind of back there. I don't know if you can see it very well. And from what I was reading on the forums, it seems like the best way of tackling this project is to just remove this whole assembly, then take the fuel filter off, put it on, and then reinstall it. So we're gonna have to take off these two hoses here and here. There is an electrical water sensor at the bottom. You can kind of see it a little bit, and probably these two bolts up top. So we'll get that off and see where we go from there. So one of the first things that I've read you had to do is to release any pressure that's built up inside the tank. So I'm gonna open up the gas, screw this thing off. Alright, so I got that off. The other thing that they kind of mentioned to do is there might be a lot of splatter, so try to kind of get the area with some toweling. So I'm going to start packing around these hoses with some toweling to try to limit what's going down. I have some cardboard underneath it, but yeah, maybe I need to put some safety glasses on too. I don't want diesel in the eye. I'll check back with you guys in a bit. So here we're going to just disconnect the sensor first. It's this plug right here. Might be a little hard to do with one hand. It is too hard. I'll come back. Okay, so the water sensor is disconnected. I'm going to see if I can get these two hoses off next. Now, my personal situation, I couldn't access the screws on these hoses with this being rigidly mounted. So I had to take off one bolt from the back so this can pivot a little bit. And then I was able to access this bolt and came it off. I packed around it with some, just some toweling, but the right tube didn't seem to squirt very much. So I don't know if you'll see the same thing or not, but I was good in that regards. I'm gonna try to take this one off too. The other thing you can notice is I did label left and right. There's also this arrow that's on top of here that indicates, I think this is what goes to this kind of fuel pump assembly. I'm not 100% sure on that, but okay. All right, so it's pretty tight back here to get these two bolts at the back of this fuel filter assembly. I'm using a ratcheting end box wrench, and it's a little bit difficult to get like full range of motion, and you're probably gonna bust your knuckles on something, but this seemed to be the best path forward on trying to get these two bolts off back. So I don't know if you can notice, but there's these like ridges on these nipple ends. So when you're pulling these hoses off after loosening up these clamps, if you notice that like you get some movement and then it stops, it might be because these clamps need to be loosened just a little bit more. I took off both sides and neither of them really seemed to squirt that bad. So once you get them off, as long as you have some paper toweling underneath it, you shouldn't make that much of a mess. So here's the whole thing removed. You got the water level sensor on the bottom. You have those two hose areas that we had to take off. You got the bleed screw and the pump at the top. So now I'm gonna try to take off this water sensor on the bottom and the fuel filter. It might be kind of hard. I might have to use a vise or something along those lines. Got to be careful because this bottom piece looks like it's plastic and I don't want to ruin that. So I'll check back in with you guys when I get a little further on this. So the Hulk must have put this water level sensor on the bottom of this fuel filter because it was extremely, I couldn't get it off by hand. And like I said, this is plastic, so I don't want to strip it out. What I ended up doing was I used this and very, very gently screwed it off because this does have flattened sides. If you look at it a little closer. So I kind of just snugged up that adjustable wrench to it, and then once it broke, then I did the rest of the way by hand. I'm just really trying to avoid rounding off these flat surfaces on here. Key note, if you want to keep your pants, you know, not soaked with diesel, is once you crack this open, all the diesel that was in these pipes right here will just end up shooting out. So I went and grabbed this, ran over here, and then just started emptying it over there. But while I have it off, I also read on the forum about checking this to see if the continuity, sorry, there's some mosquitoes, I'm getting eaten alive a little bit, to see if there's some the continuity checks on this, make sure this is still functioning. So I'm gonna grab my multimeter, check that out, and then I'm probably gonna throw this in the vise, pull this off. So that'll be the next steps. So I used this multimeter and held these two pins while raising the float bowl. And it says that there should be continuity when the float is up and no continuity when it's lowered. I tried it a bunch of different ways and it just seemed like there was no continuity no matter what. So this probably does need to be replaced. Unfortunately, with me not being able to source this part locally, it'll be a few days, and I can't wait for that long. So I'm going to install it for now, and in the future when I get the part off online or something, then I'll pull it back out and replace it. But for now, I'm just going to throw this back in. But when you guys want to test this, get your multimeter out. Try to hold it with the two pins inside here. It's almost easier if you have a buddy. And then raise and lower the float, and hopefully when it's raised you get continuity, and when it's lower you don't. In my case, I have no continuity no matter what. So I'm gonna go ahead and take off this fuel filter, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so I was able to get the fuel filter off. I just put this in a vise and then screwed the top off. The replacement I have, I was able to buy from O'Reilly's locally, so I didn't have to order that online. It's just a Wix 33128. So I'm going to put the temperature sensor on the bottom of the fuel filter, fill the fuel filter up with some diesel, put the top on, and reinstall. So the new filter came with a new gasket for the water level sensor, or whatever this float piece is. I took some diesel and put it on my finger and kind of just went around the gasket so it wasn't dry. I'm now going to make sure that the surface that this is going to put up to, and so it's a little dirty, so I'm going to clean that off a bit. I'm going to install this and fill it up with diesel, put the top back on. Making sure all these surfaces are nice and clean, because you don't want to put this all together and then notice that there's a leak. So I got the fuel filter on. Before I placed it to this, hooked it up to this assembly, I filled up the filter with some diesel that I had, then screwed it on, you know, hand tight. This allows you to kind of reduce the time it's going to take to bleed the lines. So you have this, if I can get in focus, I have this bleeder screw right here that I'm going to have to use. So I did the filling of the filter with diesel and connection to this assembly outside of the vehicle. Once I reassembled everything, then I put it back together. Some key notes when you're putting it back together is I only put one bolt in on the back so I can kind of still swivel this back and forth. Also, before I tighten these lines, I'm going to make sure that these screws are in an orientation that later on, if I have to do this again, like when I'm replacing that water sensor on the bottom, because I think mine is not working, I'll be able to access this straight with a screwdriver without having to do any weird angles to get to these screws. So I'm going to tighten this up and then proceed to bleed the fuel. All right, so I just finished getting all of the air out of the lines. The technique for doing that is you pop this screw right there off. I didn't take it all the way off, I just kind of cracked it and then pushed this pump down until I saw just like fuel coming out. I held it down when I tightened it, but I don't know if that's necessary. But it took a few pumps, and it's not the easiest hand pump to push down. So, I mean, I definitely broke a sweat trying to do it. So now that the fuel lines should be good, I'm gonna try starting it, see what happens. All right, so I have it started. I'm gonna now look underneath the vehicle, look around all the fittings, make sure I don't have any leaks. I don't see anything dripping down here. I'm just gonna watch it now as I drive around and make sure that nothing bad's happening. So I think that's about it. Total time is shit longer for me than hopefully for you guys. I like to make little issues into big issues, but this is definitely something you can do in your driveway with pretty much a vise, an adjustable wrench, and some screwdrivers. So I took a little whip around the block. It seems pretty good. When on the way back, I parked in a different spot in the driveway. You can kind of see the puddle that I left when I did it. But I'm gonna let it run for a little bit. I'm gonna check underneath it, make sure no diesel's dripping or dropping. I'm gonna check the lines one more time, and then I'm gonna call it good. Let me know, guys. I have a lift kit coming in. I can make a lift kit video. I have a boost gauge kit coming in and an EGT sensor coming in because I'm going to delete the EGR valve. So let me know if you guys are interested in seeing that or not. All right, I'll see you next time.